So guess what I'm here to talk about. The Animaniacs reboot is right around the corner, and for those of you who've probably just seen a trailer and joined some groups on social media platforms, you're probably wondering why there's animosity toward this reboot. Steven Spielberg is back, along with the original voice actors, so what's the problem? Hopefully this video will educate those in that regard, and hopefully I can also bring some light to those who need to renew their faith in this reboot because hope springs eternal and all that jazz. Since day one, since the reboot was announced 2 years ago, original staff posted in the Revival Project that they were not returning to work on this reboot. Writers, voice actors, exec producers, even Tom Ruegger himself weren't contacted at all about this reboot. The only people contacted to return were Steven Spielberg and the voice actors for the Warners, Pinky and the Brain, and Ralph the Guard. And I honestly doubt how heavily involved Steven Spielberg is with this production, and I'm surmising that he's only on board for PR purposes, given that the IMDb page for the reboot credits him for co-producing for only 3 episodes. As I said in my reboot thoughts back in 2018, I support hiring new staff for the sake of the betterment of entertainment, but refusing to hire any of the original writers didn't sit right. But in the world of Hollywood, especially when Warner is concerned, money talks and newer talent is cheaper. Bombshell number 2. Wellesley Wild, known for his work writing for Family Guy and the Ted movies, was hired on as the showrunner. Public reaction to this was mostly negative, rightly so. However, even though Family Guy is well known for being a cesspool of lowest common denominator humor, there was a time when it used to be much more than that. And to this very day, there are still diamonds in the rough. It's not much of a consolation, but it's better than nothing. Another thing that's heavily dismaying is that without the return of most of the original voice cast and writers, so too were certain characters cut from the cast. Basically, everyone who wasn't the Warners or Pinky and the Brain. Even Tom Ruegger expressed his discontent toward this, saying that no characters should be cut from the cast. Animaniacs is the name of the show. Every character is part of the cast. The Warners are not the Animaniacs, they're the Warners. And the show was more than just the Warners and Pinky and the Brain. Sure, it would have been reasonable to cut certain characters due to budgeting purposes, such as Rita, given Bernadette Peters was a Broadway performer who was hired on as a voice actress, which still would have left a sour taste, but wouldn't have been nearly as bad as cutting the entire cast, and probably would have been acceptable. And surprisingly, having a writer for Family Guy being in charge of this reboot wasn't the worst part. The worst part is the characters being cut from the cast due to controversial reasons, which is politically correct lingo for garbage. Rita and Runt were removed due to these controversial reasons, which makes about as much sense as being an underwater fire juggler. Being offended by straight characters is absolutely moronic, and they're not even a couple. Minerva Mink and Hello Nurse were also removed for these controversial reasons. Social justice does not belong in the world of entertainment. Entertainment doesn't exist to educate its audience by chastising them, especially in 2020, where sexism has no credible proponents whatsoever. In fact, the original Animaniacs aired in the early 90s, when feminism was also at a peak. They and other shows chose to bring this to light by way of satire. The Warner Brothers' exaggerated reactions to provocative female characters were that satire, as well as Dot's reciprocated reactions to male characters. Hello Nurse and Minerva Mink were catalysts to that satire, so the controversial reasons to these character exclusions don't even make any sense. And that's not even the real harm that this does. I've already seen people react to Minerva Mink's and Hello Nurse's exclusions to, not a big deal, I didn't care that much about these characters, I understand because of the current social climate, and that's the problem. The modern day, specifically the modern day, social justice narratives have normalized justifying censorship of things that most people genuinely don't have a problem with. They exist solely to force the world to adopt new social norms for the sake of a few people who are incapable of adapting to current ones. I want to make another one of these videos talking about the social stigmatic vitriol in these narratives in further detail, but that's not what this video is about. What this video is about is the quality of this reboot and of entertainment in general being jeopardized. Video games, Battlefield 5 and The Last of Us 2. Horrible user scores, in part due to feminist, gay, trans, social justice propaganda. Sports, NBA and NFL ratings tanking over the blatant propaganda for racial equality. It's happened to them, it can happen to Animaniacs, and it's happened to other cartoons. And no, the poor reception isn't racism, sexism, transphobia, or what have you. It's because people in 2020 already fully understand and accept full equality and are tired of having it thrown into their faces and beaten into their skulls. This is what's been killing entertainment for years, and it needs to stop. It needs to stop being justified. Entertainment exists as escapism, as a form of happiness, and we need to stop trying to appease people who don't have that in their best interest. Now, a Family Guy writer being the showrunner might mean that this reboot won't be tainted with as much SJW propaganda as I'm making it out to be, or maybe even end up satirizing it, but the writing is already on the wall. So like I said in my 2018 thoughts, I'm expecting the reboot to be bad, so that I'm not disappointed by it being bad, but if it turns out to be good, I'll be pleasantly surprised. Regardless of what you feel after its airing, we still have another season ahead of us. Yeah, we're not done after the 20th. This reboot was greenlit for 2 seasons. So whatever reception the first season receives dictates the outcome of the second season. NFL backed out of the social justice stuff when they saw it directly affect their ratings. People are starting to see the pattern. Well, video game developers aren't. But the point is that the second season will most likely be better than the first regardless of how well the first season comes out. I want to be optimistic. I don't want to be all doom and gloom about this reboot, but the key factor is the original staff not returning. Tom Ruegger, the other exec producers, the writers, the voice actors for the other characters, they would have all loved to come back for this, and none of them were contacted, and it was a shot in the heart for them, just like it is for me and for others. That was the wound inflicted that crippled my drive for this. Yet at the same time, I am still willing to hold out hope that somewhere on that writing staff there is a young writer or a group of young writers, probably in their 20s or 30s, who grew up watching this show and are excited to work on it. People who are enamored with the show and seek to restore it to the glorious beacon of the American animation renaissance that they remember it being. But hey, don't take my words for what they mean to me. Take them for what they mean to you, and shape your own opinions. You think I'm on point or do you think I'm tripping? We'll find out for sure in 2 weeks. Yes. In 2 weeks, we shall see.